I'll tell you what a delight it is to have a young scholar with us as well. You know, this is what universities are all about. This is what universities do. Sometimes, you know, we might forget, but it's as exciting as it is for her. I just want you to know it's as exciting for me as well. And you're an inspiration for the young undergraduates who are here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming today, despite the weather, and thank you, Professor Katz, for that very nice introduction, because everything she said about state development is very pertinent to what we're talking about today, although our area of interest is slightly before that in China. So my name is Debby, as you might have heard, and I study anthropology and art history at NYU currently. And my passion for archaeology has long directed this path of study, as well as me being a participatory member of the Chinese culture, history, and society. So my interests naturally lay in my home culture. And piggybacking on the festivities of the Chinese New Year, which was last week, and the Chinese and Jewish exchange program that we have here at YU, I'll be sharing with you today what I am most passionate about in this field. So this is the site where I worked, and a place that I have very closely to my heart right now. It's called Yangguanzhai. It's on the peripheries of Xi'an, which was the capital that we were talking about, that was very important for Chinese dynastic history. It's located in central Shanxi at the intersection of two major rivers, the Jing and Wei rivers. So it's a prime location for settlement and later state development. And it belonged to the Yangshao culture, which was a major Neolithic culture in this Guangzhong area. And during this late period of Yangshao, it was an era of great social and technological development with numerous super sites and indicators of social complexities, of which this is one site, but it's known as a super site. It's not that big according to modern standards, but it is still the size of a substantive village that we have today. And lastly, we have these miaodigou vessels that were decorated with these abstract, what we call abstract fish patterns that were incongruent to the miaodigou cultural tradition. So we know that this site was very much culturally integrated with different sites of this area. But not more important than this site, which is the Arlitou. Now we enter into one of the most heated discussions of Chinese dynastic beginnings. Since the Shang, China's historical genealogy has been recorded by one dynasty after the other, and these records are crucial in confirming the notion of a continuous history and therefore culture on this piece of land. According to ancient historical texts, the first dynasty, which was the Xia, did exist, and Chinese scholarship supports this, although the dynasty's existence still needs international confirmation. But if this is confirmed, then it would push back the beginnings of Chinese dynastic civilization for around 1,000 or so more years. So this site, Arlitou, is the most important piece of evidence that would reaffirm the existence and actuality of the Xia dynasty. It's believed to be the capital of this first dynasty for its large size and clear evidence of social stratification. And as Professor Katz already said, this is the beginnings of state development where social complexity begins to appear. So we have already clear evidence of social hierarchy and organization, as well as the probable existence of administration or rulers at this so-called capital of the Xia, which was Arlitou. However, rather problematically, the idea of there being a Xia dynasty did come from historical records, which is not always very neutral in the things that they tried to describe. And especially because the existence of the Xia was written in the Shang dynasty, which was the dynasty that conquered its records. So in that case, you can imagine how certain biases would have existed. So following this historical information, archaeologists deduced that this site, being the largest and most complex one in the described area, would be the capital. But apart from this deduction and the unearthing of a limited number of prototypical bronze vessels that you see here, there's no definitive evidence that directly links our Litou to this first Xia dynasty. So it might be just a simple complex, that's an oxymoron, but simply a complex polity in this area that existed contemporaneously. So we see that concrete conclusions have yet to be reached for the identity of this site, but also that biases of history and the political stance behind archaeological research, along with the ancient political pretenses that govern historical records, must be recognized before we delve straight into concrete conclusions. So this is a topic that still requires further research into. Now, lastly, this is my, I wouldn't say main, but one of the main areas of that I'm interested in, called Sanxingdui. Sanxingdui is a site in Chengdu, in Sichuan province. Sorry, the map here is really small, but you see that Sichuan is further southwest of the area we were just at, which was in somewhat northern East China in the Central Plains area. So it is quite a distance, especially for the ancient transportation system back then. But the remains that we have from the site are mostly two sacrificial pits, and just some foundations of the city structure that we had before. But these two sacrificial pits revealed astonishing quantities of precious stones, ivories, jades, and mostly bronze vessels that we have up here, which would attest to their ability to import and trade such goods with alliance or just neighboring states. This site, when viewed in relation to the Shang dynasty, which is important because in archaeology everything is viewed in relation to each other, but this site, when viewed in relation to the important place that Shang has in Chinese culture and political narrative, we see that it might actually be a predecessor or contemporaneous influencer for the Shang bronze vessels that we know of so well today. The idea that bronze metallurgy developed independently in the Central Plains by the Shang dynasty or its predecessor, the Xia dynasty, is a very much culturally esteemed idea, as we can see from the many bronze vessel museums that we have around China, especially dedicated to this material remain. However, from further archaeological research, we have determined that Sanxingdui's settlement period, so this site here, the settlement period began in the early Xia dynasty and probably even before that, so definitely long before the Shang dynasty. So as we have already seen from only these few archetypal sites, Chinese archaeology is invaluable in its contributions to weaving and reconstructing a Chinese cultural identity, as well as discovering a convoluted past of human history. With archaeological research, the discovery of an overwhelmingly diverse peoples and cultures on this piece of land reveals an inherently heterogeneous foundation for this ostensibly homogeneous nation. But more importantly, I hope that some of you seated here today might be more inspired to pursue the field of archaeology, which is often overlooked, to a greater depth, because after all, the discoveries that we have made are more than just pottery and bones, but they're pieces of a collective and complex human history to which archaeology's contribution is indispensable. Thank you.